let's get right into the what if. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya was born in a village on the outskirts of Japan, but this village would soon become a target of one of the most notorious villains ever. This village would be basically training flat out ninjas, and they weren't too small or too big by any means. It wasn't a village that would be overwhelming in terms of how many people were on there or in there, but at the same time, they were powerful people. They knew a lot of martial arts and they knew how to truly defend themselves. But here's the thing, there is no defending yourself when something as powerful as this comes knocking. Actually, a being with a bit of a weird face mask, a mask covering their entire head, actually seemingly helping him breathe for the most part, approaches the village. Izuku was just a baby at this time, but you can hear the screams of what's happening just in the small little distance. Izuku begins to cry and cry and cry as well. He begins to basically just bolster how sad he is, or just crying like a baby would normally do. And the mom, or Inko Midoriya, would grab him, pick him up, cradle him up, and also just run as fast as possible. And of course, a man that was basically Izuku's father would tell them to run as well, to not look back, just run. It doesn't matter what you hear, it doesn't matter what happens, just run. It seems like these ninja characters, or these ninja people, would be fighting off this being, and they would stand some sort of a chance. But once the quirks began to unravel and once the powers began to surge, it seems like the whole village was mowed down. Inko Midoriya would run with her child as fast as possible, leaving everything behind, not taking a single thing. She peeks backwards to see what's happening and sees that the whole village is in flames. Tears begin to fall from her face as she continues to run, and eventually she was out of there, gone, and entering a major city, entering a major area that she knew that she would be somewhat safe. But now what does she do? She has no idea. So she decides to do the only thing she knows how, and that's to teach martial arts. Now, she would teach this martial arts extremely undercover, extremely undercover. She would even kind of rename it and do all these extra things, kind of making it seem like it's a basic martial arts. But she would label it as martial arts for basically up and coming heroes, that they can learn basic martial arts, basic ways, basic takedowns and stuff like that. And she would teach them to a large degree, and it wasn't a big practice, but it was just enough so that she could make ends meet, so that she can survive and be somewhat undercover. She doesn't know if this person who invaded her village is still going to be coming after her, or even coming after her family. So what is she supposed to do? So this is the only decision that makes sense, the only decision that makes sense for her children. I mean, seriously, if you had all of this happen and everything like this occur, laying low would feel like the only course of action. So that's what they would do. That's what all of them would do. That's what Izuku and his mother would do, would lay low. Now, Izuku wouldn't know much about their past, wouldn't know much about the village, wouldn't know much about their heritage, wouldn't know much about what they truly came from. And at the end of the day, he wouldn't learn much about it, if not anything about it, ever. Now, he would pick up a little bit of martial arts, being that, he would be around his mother quite a bit. So there's really no way else to put this. He would learn it quite quickly, just being around his mother, and also, on top of that, just the bloodline that he follows. Now, this is just the start of what he truly is. He would pick up on all of these things, and it seems like his bloodline, or the blood that flows through his body, is truly taking a hold of what he is. Now, with that said, he actually continues training extremely hard, just working hard, extremely hard, and he gets stronger and stronger throughout this time. I mean, he's just a little kid. He goes to school and stuff like that, and there is no sign of a quirk from him. And his mother kind of just dismays the idea that he's going to have a quirk. I mean, seriously, there's just no, it's not going to happen like that. He's not going to have some weird superpower, right? Like, and really, and frankly, their people haven't had the power that they normally had in a very long time. I mean, it's been forever. And this is what she would believe for a long time. I mean, she would teach her son martial arts, but she would have no intention of allowing him to become a hero. I mean, there would be kind of this idea of, oh yeah, maybe I can, but his mother would always tell him to just focus on what they could control right now, and all of the above, just before you go out and try to, extend yourself too far. Now, they would go to the doctors when he's younger to just check if he has a quirk, but of course, yeah, he doesn't, not at all. But he is a little bit different than your normal kid, and the doctor would even ask about this and ask why certain things in his body are just slightly different. And of course, the mother would deny it. Iko would deny it fully and just as full as she possibly can, saying that she doesn't really know. She's not sure. Maybe that's the aftermath of not having a quirk or something like that, and the doctor would say that he's not 100% sure, in which Inko would get him out of there pretty quickly. But of course, Izuku wouldn't really know what's happening, but it would worry her that the doctor was questioning the biology or the different biology that maybe was portrayed within Izuku, because the differences were so minor that it would take somebody that is actually looking for it to actually recognize it. But maybe the doctor doesn't really, think too far ahead of this. And even the doctor doesn't know, because they scrambled out so quickly that, he can't make his full and total breakdown or analysis of what this truly is. Now, it would take some time, but around 12 to 13 years old, Izuku would be pretty damn good at martial arts, if not one of the highest level students that his mother has. He may be a kid, but his bloodline was built for this, was built for the way of basically martial arts, and a lot of martial arts at that. They were skilled shinobi slash ninja slash kind of those type of fighters, so there is no doubt that they would be at that level, and there's no doubt that, well, her son would be at a prodigy-like level of martial arts, right? But one day when he is just, at school, minding his own business, he's of course getting bullied by the fact that he doesn't have a quirk. And this would kind of annoy Izuku. Come on, leave me alone. This is ridiculous. How are you going to bully me for not having a quirk? And how are you going to bully me for things I can't control? Now, Izuku's thinking logically, but of course the students, they don't care about logic. They don't care about, if it's right, if it's wrong, or anything like that. And eventually, someone by the name of Bakugo, or Katsuki Bakugo, would go to shoot an explosion at Izuku. And as the explosion is about to hit Izuku right in the face, Izuku would put his hands up. He would feel this cold sensation come over his body as ice would form and would block the blast of explosion that is going to be basically inflicted directly on his face. In which Izuku is shocked to see this, but his whole body would go chill, and he could feel the ice that he could currently create, and it seems as if there is very little restriction to what he's allowed to do. He even begins to freeze Bakugo's feet and tells him to never mess with him ever again. And Bakugo is stuck there until he blasts the ice off, but the ice is extremely durable, so it takes him a little bit to actually destroy it, at least to a large extent. Now, this power would be brought up to his mother, and his mother would, not really know what he's talking about and stuff like that. But after the jig is up, she would eventually tell him that, well, it seems as if he inherited powers that are known to their, well, you could call it their tribe or maybe their clan. But that's beyond the point now. They're all gone. But these powers are one of a kind, and it allows you to utilize the powers of ice. And the ice powers that Izuku holds, it's so much more than you could possibly imagine. It's not just some basic ice powers. I mean, he has full-on control of ice, or the full-on ice manipulation, the ability to create weapons, the ability to freeze over buildings if he so chooses, or if he so chooses to inflict that much force. But on top of that, of course, he is an expert martial artist now, and he tells his mother that if this is the case, if he was gifted these powers, these rare powers, something that they haven't seen for years, generations, if not centuries, then why not allow him to become a hero? In which his mother wouldn't like the idea of him becoming a hero. I mean, no, he can't become a hero. It puts too much of a target on his back. But Izuku insists on this, saying that they don't have to, worry about money anymore. They don't have to worry about anything else. I mean, seriously, maybe he could just flat out get more attention to her dojo just from joining a hero school. Seriously. In which the mother, of course, Inko, would still shake her head and ask her son if he's willing to risk being found out, willing to risk being hurt just to be a hero. If he's willing to make the sacrifices, then she'll allow it. But the thing is, there may be a lot of repercussions that come because of this. In which Izuku asks once again, what truly happened the night that they ran away? The night that she took him and ran away. And then she breaks down a little bit, but composes herself and tells him the story of how they basically survived the extinction of their own bloodline. In which she explains that this whole masked man, this man came in and basically exterminated everybody. But luckily enough, they fended him off just long enough to where she could escape with him. And that was it. They left everything else behind. All that is left is rubble. And everything is gone. In which Izuku asks if that's true, did she go back? Did she go back and check? And she would respond that one night, yes, she did. Long after the whole battle, she went back and checked, and everybody was gone. Everybody. It's like they were defeated, they were killed, and then somebody took their body, swooped them up, and got rid of them. But it wasn't your normal getting rid of them. It looked spotless. It looked like they wanted those bodies for some reason, but she doesn't know why. But the only assumption she can make is because of the powers that he holds. In which it's been years. Tens of years, right? It's been whatever, 13, 14 years by now. So, of course, there's a chance that they're still looking, but there's also a chance that they gave up on this escapade that they had to find someone like him. Izuku looks at himself and asks what makes him so special, what makes him the person that they think he is, in which she says that they all thought that he was the next coming of Sub-Zero. In which Izuku would pause for a second and then be like, who the hell is Sub-Zero? In which, of course, Inko would just shake her head and would explain the history and the story of Sub-Zero to him, and about that there are many of them, right? There are many versions of Sub-Zero. He is not one person necessarily, but there are many versions of him, and they all thought that maybe, just maybe, he was the coming of Sub-Zero, and now it seems like that's the truth, that he is truly Sub-Zero. In which Izuku would be shocked to hear this. I mean, this idea that he is some mythical being, but Inko would shut this down, that it's not necessarily like he's a mythical being, but he's given and gifted powers of ice manipulation, and this should not be taken lightly. To use it to his fullest strength and advantage, do not let them down. In which Izuku, of course, would nod his head that he will never let them down, never let his ancestors or his mother down. He's going to show exactly what he's capable of, but he's going to make sure that nobody else knows of where he's come from. And of course, this would kind of make Inko happy, telling him that she just wants him to be safe. So if anybody asks, this is a quirk. His ability to use ice powers is a quirk. And on top of that, the martial arts was learned from, some stray martial artist within the cities of Japan. And it's that simple. And that's it. In which Izuku would nod his head, and he would go throughout the rest all the way up until the end of middle school with this notion. He's a late bloomer. He just got his ability to use his ice quirk. He has a quirk, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And frankly, he would actually stop getting bullied. But he would get bullied, from a couple people just because, they're salty that he has such an awesome quirk. But they would bully him because, oh, yeah, you're a late bloomer, haha, all that stuff. Some lame bully tactics that, some people do. And, of course, this wouldn't affect Izuku very much. He just doesn't care. He is just like, whatever. But this would lead them to basically the end of middle school. And once the end of middle school ensues, of course, the middle school teacher's like, hey, what do you guys want to, I know you guys want to all become heroes. So he throws out the career aptitude tests, and everybody, celebrates and stuff like that. But Izuku is just straight up locked in. He's not thinking about anything else. He's not worried about anything else. All he can think about now is becoming a hero. That this UA High School is the next step for him, and he is disciplined. That's one thing he's carried on for a long time. He may have struggled in his earlier years with studying and stuff like that, just because his mother maybe wasn't really accustomed to the cities of Japan's education. But Izuku, he is disciplined enough to figure it all out, and he's already figured it all out, and he's ready to go. So yes, he does get a little bit of backlash from Bakugo. Bakugo saying like, oh, I was going to be the only person to go to UA, blah, blah, blah. But of course he would ignore him, saying that it's whatever, like, you don't worry about it, right? In which Izuku would leave before Bakugo could even say another word, and he would begin writing in a notebook that he continues to write in about different powers he believes he can utilize, different ways he could utilize his powers, and on top of that, different ways he could utilize the martial arts and the weaponry usage that he could possibly use through his just acting skills, right? His skill of a martial artist, what weaponry and on the art of weapons that he's been learning for a while now. He wants to know which ones would be most effective. He's thought about ice daggers, ice swords, ice scythes, anything you can think of, maybe even an ice bow. It's a little impractical, but maybe something he could utilize in the future, but is not something he's fully concerned about, but it's stuff that he writes down in his journal. So he decides to take a longer way home, and as he takes that longer way home, he heads under a bridge. Now, this bridge actually has or is connected to the sewage system of Japan. And as he heads under the bridge, he would hear the rumblings below and wouldn't think much of it. Yeah, that's until something would come bursting out of the manhole cover, being that of the sludge villain. The sludge villain would come bursting out and immediately go after Izuku, telling him that he doesn't know how he got here or why he's here, but he needs his body so that he can get away from that freak, that big old freak. In which Izuku wouldn't know what he's talking about, but Izuku would immediately slide out of the tunnel of some sorts or underneath the bridge, and he would slide out of there, and he would immediately be pretty far away from the sludge villain. The sludge villain would follow the ice as he tries to get to Izuku, but Izuku would stop him immediately, disintegrating the ice on the floor, causing him to trip up a little bit, but then shooting an ice blast straight from his hands immediately at the sludge villain, slowing him down drastically, and Izuku would begin to make daggers as he throws them at the sludge villain at crucial points like his eyes. One of them would hit one of the sludge villain's eyes, scraping his eye and causing him to screech in pain. And eventually, he would hear someone else appear from behind the sludge villain with a Detroit Smash. As this Detroit Smash would ring off, Izuku would put an ice barrier in front of him as the wind from the Detroit Smash would smash into it as well, and it would blow the ice barrier back a little bit, but he would be able to stop it as it crumbles to pieces after the wind subsides. He would look up to see the one and only All Might. He would be in complete shock, but All Might would be congratulating him, saying that he did one hell of a job to stop the villain, and he's really proud of him. I mean, he did a heck of a job. I mean, All Might couldn't even catch him for the most part, but he was able to subdue him long enough so that he would get an opening, and he appreciates that. In which Izuku would kind of be taken back by who this is, because this is kind of someone he's idolized throughout the time he's been here, and idolized just full on. And frankly, a lot of people do idolize All Might, in all fairness, so I guess it does make sense. But flat out, he asked All Might for an autograph. He asked him about any questions about being a hero and stuff like that. And eventually All Might is about to leave, but Izuku grabs him by the leg, wanting to ask him one last thing. And he doesn't know how to ask it, but he grabs him, and All Might takes off, and Izuku's flying in the air, in which All Might tells him to let go, but Izuku says it's really not that simple, just to land on a building. They land on a building, and Izuku asks him, well, here's the thing, you know, there's people that don't like me and my family, you could say, and there's danger in me becoming a hero, like massive amounts. Is it still worth becoming a hero and trying to save people if that means that I'm putting myself and maybe even my family at risk? In which All Might would sit there and think for a second, and then he would tell the kid that risk is everything for a hero. Sacrificing your life for the sake of others is being a hero. And he's not sure what his circumstance is, but if he truly becomes a hero, he'll be able to protect everybody, and that includes his mother, his family, his father, whoever he's talking about. That would include them as well. Izuku would hear this and would sigh in relief just a little bit, and would look back up at All Might, and All Might would be gone. Well, sort of. All Might would turn into a smaller version of himself, and Izuku would immediately pull out a katana made of ice, saying that he's not All Might, that he better fess up who he is now or else. In which All Might would shake him off and say, no, this is, it is me. But he explains his injury and so on, and of course Izuku just evaporates his sword or breaks it and shatters it, and he would apologize for threatening him with an ice sword. In which, of course, All Might would say that it's all right. And All Might would say that he needs to go now, but it was good speaking to the kid, and he needs to leave like ASAP. So All Might leaves as Izuku basically finds his way down as well. But as he walks home or heads home, well, let's just say something unexpected actually happens. And that thing that's unexpected, well, let's just say it's the sludge villain being released from his captivity of the bottles that they stored him in, and now he currently has Bakugo. Now Izuku walks and he sees all of this happening, and he would look at Bakugo's eyes as if he's crying and screaming for help, and inside of him he remembers all of the things that Bakugo did, all of the things that Katsuki Bakugo put him through. But then he thinks to himself, what a hero would actually do. What would a hero truly do? And that's go in without another second to think. And immediately he would skate in on ice. Heroes trying to grab him, but the heroes miss. he would immediately put out all of the fire that's going on with his ice as he sprays it down. And as the heroes see this, they see it as an opening themselves. Immediately, Izuku would fire sharp little daggers of ice toward the eyes of the sludge villain, and immediately puncturing them, allowing Bakugo to break free of the restraint of the sludge villain. He would grab Bakugo as he throws him in the air and tells him to use his explosions to push off and try to fly a little bit. Bakugo does just this, saying he already knows how to do that. Don't treat him like a baby, or don't treat him like an absolute nerd. In which Bakugo would fly off, and then Izuku would do the same, as he immediately would move away from the sludge villain, and other heroes would try to converge, but in terms of raw power, they don't really stand a chance. But this act of courage, this act of selflessness would inspire the number one hero to actually risk his own quirk and risk his time limit, frankly, transforming back into his giant form, or his All Might form, his true All Might form, and blast the sludge villain with another Detroit smash, in which that would obliterate the sludge villain. And immediately all the heroes would congratulate Bakugo for being so brave, but would lecture Izuku a little bit for what he did. But luckily he was around, because they wouldn't have been able to put out those fires as easy as he did. Izuku wouldn't really listen to much more of this, as he would just leave, wanting to not be caught too much in the paparazzi and all of that. But eventually he would be caught up by somebody, and that would be All Might. All Might would stand there and tell him that it was very impressive, more impressive than you could possibly imagine watching what he did, truly. And he says that the kid has guts, the kid has absolute strength and power, and he's impressive. And he asks him one more time that does he truly fear that him or his family may be hurt if he decides to go down the path of being a hero. In which Izuku says yes. All Might shakes his head and says that he doesn't have to give him more information. He understands. He gets where he's coming from, and he doesn't know where Izuku comes from necessarily in terms of, like place of origin, but he tells him that he wants to guarantee that he has all the capabilities, all the chances, and all of the wherewithal to truly protect the ones he loves. So he's going to give him an offer. And that offer, well, he wants him to take on the quirk of One for All. Izuku, completely shocked. What is he talking about? One for All? And All Might would explain his quirk, explain that it can be passed down, explains that he wants to give him his powers. Izuku is shocked to hear this, but he tells him that he'll take any advantage he can to make it so that his family never gets hurt again. So he puts out his hand and he shakes All Might's hand and tells him that he would love to be trained by All Might and would love to take on the quirk of One for All. All Might would nod and tell him to meet him at Dagobah Beach late at night around, 8 p.m. and they're going to get some hellish training in from night to dawn, in which Izuku says whatever needs to be done he'll do, in which All Might would say that it looks like the kid's already in pretty good shape, so the training shouldn't be anything too difficult for him. And Izuku says that in terms of in shape, he has no idea what he's capable of, no idea how prepared he was for this moment specifically. Izuku would nod toward All Might and would leave, heading home to his mother, and would even explain the whole situation, in which she would be shocked to hear this, but would think that this would be a way for him to truly stay safe and for all of them to truly stay safe. And that's just the facts of it. And Izuku himself, well, let's just say this would start a new era for Izuku, a new chance for Izuku. His whole idea was he was going to UA, going to that entrance exam with his ice powers and pure martial arts. But with the opportunity of gaining the powers of All Might himself, the powers that he portrays, well, let's just say those powers may come in handy more than you could possibly even imagine. Because Izuku Midoriya is, or may be, the new Sub-Zero, but he will truly be the next in line for the #1 hero, or basically the passed down prodigy of what One For All is going to create him, or create of him, in which will let him and allow him to send this world, this world of heroes, into a true spiral. Because Deku, or Sub-Zero, is coming to the hero world, and he's going to be even stronger than anybody could possibly imagine. So of course he's thinking to himself, how could he save people? How could he help people? But how is he going to take down the unknown assailant that hurt and destroyed his clan when he was just a baby? But for now, this is where we're going to end off. What if Deku was Sub-Zero Part 1? Izuku Midoriya has truly and finally started his training with the one and only All Might. Being that he has basically been given permission to gain access to One For All and All Might's powers themselves, the training throughout the process of 10 months is a very simple one. Izuku is already massive in strength, right? His body's already honed to a large degree, and he's a lot stronger than most people. Now, on top of that, his martial arts is on a totally different level, and he's already shown powers involving ice. His technical ability, his skill, all of these things add up. So when they train extremely hard, and eventually he would be ready for One For All, he would actually be ready in half the time, or only 5 months. So All Might decides that, it's a good time to give him One For All, especially if he's already fully just set to go. So he gives him One For All and tells him to eat a piece of his hair. Of course, he's a little hesitant on this. He's like, that's kind of nasty. Why would you want me to do that? And, well, All Might says, well, it's either hair or blood. And, well, Izuku then eats the hair. So he eats All Might's hair and doesn't feel any different. But 24 hours later, he would feel just a weird, odd sensation throughout his body. It seems as if One For All has now been activated, and he doesn't know what it's all about, and he hasn't really tried to mess with it at all. And when he goes to another training session at Dagobah Beach, he finally is able to activate it and try it out on his first try. All Might would tell him to, be careful, make sure to not absolutely hurt yourself. But Izuku already has some ideas. His first idea is holding back. He wants to make sure that he utilizes One For All, but he doesn't utilize it at its full strength. He knows what happens when you punch a wall at full strength. It's gonna hurt your hand extremely bad. It might break the wall, but it'll hurt your hand really bad. You might be able to punch a wall and break it, or at least put a hole in it, without fully putting your whole weight and your whole arm strength and everything behind it. You might be able to break a board the same way. You don't need to put your all strength behind to break a board. You just need enough. And that's kind of the idea that Izuku kind of upholds for himself. And he decides to hold back on One For All just a little bit. So he does that. He uses what he believes to be 5% of One For All. And when he begins to move around, he moves around extremely fast. And All Might, well, he's extremely impressed. He is taken back by this. At the end of the day, he didn't expect Izuku to be immediately in action and being able to utilize One For All in this way. And he tells All Might he's only using it at 5% of its power as he kicks a tree and the tree just goes flying. In which All Might says, well, it seems like the kid can crank it up just a little bit if his body doesn't feel too much stress. In which Izuku says, yeah, his body doesn't feel that much stress at all, so let's crank it up a little bit. He cranks it up to about 15 and can feel his body stressing out just a little bit more. So he decides to tone it back to about 10, and he feels no strain on his body at all. So this is a good note to definitely put in his mind, because of course, he's just starting with the quirk, so he wants to take it extremely slow. He doesn't want to, hurt his body or ruin his body at all. So he utilizes 10% of One For All and he trains with it, and he trains with it all the time for months and months and months. He would slowly, percent by percent, would increase his volume. Yes, he could go from 10 to 15 and stuff like that, but those are big jumps. So he decides to progress percent by percent, or little by little, and eventually at the end of the 10-month training sessions, he's actually at 20%. And he could be higher, like he could genuinely use higher, maybe even up to 40%, but 20% is literally perfect for him. Like, he's not hurting, he's not like, you know, straining his body, nothing. He's able to use his ice powers without any restraint. He's able to basically do everything he wants to do as if he's just a normal person, and he's not, you know, taming this insane power. So he's able to use 20% of One For All right now, and his ice powers and his techniques and all of the above, which makes him formidable. I mean, he even goes head to head with All Might in a spar, and All Might is severely impressed. I mean, the ice powers, 20% of One For all of that, and by the way, One For All boosting the ice powers as well. All Might would tell him that he almost, if not is, on the level of him. I mean, he could literally go head to head with All Might. Yes, they're not trying to kill each other, but at the same time, they're both holding back. Izuku nods and agrees and says it's obvious All Might is holding back because he doesn't want to hurt anybody, and Izuku says the same thing. He's holding back because he doesn't want to hurt All Might. He knows that All Might already has some injuries, and he would never want to, you know, hurt All Might on accident, in which All Might nods and even understands this and says, yeah, I mean, there's no point of trying to hurt each other here. We are trying to get kind of like an idea of how strong or how capable they are, or how capable he is with his powers. This would lead them to the UA entrance exam, and something that Izuku is massively prepared for. He's been studying, he's been training, and he's just flat out ready. There is no way around that one. Izuku is ready for the UA entrance exam, and he takes on the first portion, which would be the written portion, and he feels like he did a pretty good job. I mean, the kid is pretty intelligent. He's got a really good work ethic and all of that, so that definitely helps a massive degree. And his old tribe or whatever, you know, they did have some good teachings, but he was too young to really know them. But his mother can pass those on for the most part. Now, he would obviously go on to the practical part of the exam, and this is where the kid shows off. Izuku begins to show off everything. His speed, his technique, I mean, his flat-out strength. Initially, he doesn't use his ice at all, just running around, breaking through the robots, because he got a request by All Might to try his best to not use the powers that he has, or of, you know, ice, make sure not to use them, and actually just focus on more or less striking with One For All. What All Might doesn't know is that this ice that he holds isn't typical. It's not your typical, you know, ice quirk. Like, this is far from it. This is actually part of him. This is no abnormality. No. This is part of Izuku and the clan he is from. And Izuku continues to just obliterate everything using just One For All. But eventually, he would hear the screams of a young girl. And this young girl would get his attention pretty quickly, and he would go over there to go save her, and he would see a giant robot. And when I mean giant, I mean giant. This robot is the 0 Point robot, and it's towering over buildings itself. So Izuku decides that he's going to take matters into his own hands. He utilizes One For All to actually jump up, but then he would just cover the entirety of the 0 Point robot in ice, slowing it down drastically, and then he would cut one of its legs off, at least a certain way, so that the robot would fall backwards, and it would tumble back and shatter to pieces for the most part. But the robot wouldn't be like, you know, completely dust or anything like that, but the parts that were mainly ice would be shattered, and it would break through a lot of the steel that was on the robot. He would go over to the girl and help her up and basically bring her over to Recovery Girl, and she would thank him and blah 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 and all this stuff, and he would introduce himself as Izuku Midoriya, and this would be Ochako Uraraka. Izuku basically nods to her and says that it's good to see that she's not, you know, splattered or completely splat on the floor, which is always a positive, in which he would say that and then just head off. but everybody would be in shock and awe. At the end of the day, Izuku just showed things that nobody even possibly could imagine, at least not at this stage. I mean, the kid seems accelerated, a lot more accelerated than anybody else that has been here or is here. Izuku is showing off ice powers that is on a totally different level. And on top of that, well, it's just he's showing off One For All, which obviously they don't know about, but he's showing off physical capabilities that are absolutely levels above anything people could possibly imagine. I mean, Izuku Midoriya is showing off things that many would only hope for, or many people would just, or many future heroes or students would pray to get this type of strength. And Izuku showing it off day number 1. Heroes themselves would be jealous, and a lot of them, let's be honest, will be, because Izuku is going to be showing out more than you could possibly imagine, especially when he hears that he got the number 1, or he is the number 1 student in the UA entrance exam. And All Might would be boistering with pride, and he would be happy for the kid. I mean, at the end of the day, they did spend 10 months together training, so he does see the kid as his like protege, son like, type person, and he really thinks highly of him. And Izuku would be headed to Class 1A for the first day of UA High School, and he would just be ready. He'd be ready to go, but he immediately would sense something. He would look to his side and wonder why his teacher was just laying on the ground in a sleeping bag, in which Izuku would look at him like slightly, and Aizawa would kind of wave him off, telling him to just go to his seat and don't say anything, in which Izuku would shrug and go sit down, as everybody would begin talking, doing this and that, and even the girl that he saved would come in and begin kind of talking loudly and be like, oh, you're the guy that saved me, blah, blah, blah. In which Izuku just wouldn't say anything, knowing that the teacher is literally right there. And eventually he would stand up and tell them all to shut their mouths, that this is not social hour. This is not their time to make friends. No. This is for them to become a hero. This is their chance to become the hero that they want to be so badly. And he's going to make sure that they become that hero, but it all starts here and now, day number 1. And yeah, they're not going to a silly orientation. He wants to see what they're all about. He wants to test them and test their quirks, telling them all to go outside and so that they can actually mess with and test their quirks to a large degree. This is when everybody would begin testing their quirks, and Katsuki Bakugo would be allowed to go up first because, his mouth, he was yapping, he was, saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna be the best here, just kind of trying to get under Izuku's skin. And he would chuck a ball, or like a baseball, pretty damn far, a little over 700 meters. But then Izuku would be up next, and he would rocket this thing extremely far. I mean, he would not only utilize One For All, but he would also utilize his ice powers, sending it even farther as he blasts ice at it as it slings through the air even faster, getting just slightly above even Bakugo. And Bakugo would be pissed. Bakugo would be extremely angry about this. I mean, the fact that he's showing him up and the fact that he's, showing off, like, this is ridiculous. But of course, Izuku's just standing there. I mean, he's not even like responding to Bakugo. He's not saying like, yeah, I'm showing off, or he's not even like, he's not even gloating, excuse me. Like, he's straight up not even gloating. He doesn't even care. He thinks that, or he acts like this is just another day in the office. And that is exactly what Aizawa's been looking for, someone like him. In which Izuku just shrugs off Bakugo, and Bakugo is mad about this, and Bakugo immediately goes to actually attack Izuku with an explosion, and Izuku turns around as his eyes would kind of, slightly change and get ready, and basically like they would kind of brighten a little bit as if he's about to activate his ice, and ice would begin to appear around his body, or at least the mist of the cold. And before he could even strike Bakugo down, well, let's just say Aizawa would handle it immediately. Aizawa would grab Bakugo with his scarf and tell him to shut his mouth. Like, he better stop right now, because the kid was about to hurt him real bad. In which Bakugo would say, oh no, that's not gonna happen, like he'd beat his ass, this and that, like he'd kill him, like that's what he was telling, he's like, oh, kill him. In which Aizawa would be like, look man, like if I let you go, like, and you attack him, I'm not going to stop him from attacking you. In which he would let him go, and Bakugo would try to attack Izuku once again, and Izuku would basically hip toss him, slam him on the ground, put an ice blade to his neck, and would just say the word dead, right? He'd be like, dead. And then he would let him up, in which Bakugo would attack him again, and he would do the same thing, just like in a different way, right? He would kick him in the stomach, and then have a sword to the back of Bakugo's neck, and he would tell him, dead. And he would do that about 3 or 4 times to prove to Bakugo, like, I could have ended you immediately. If I so choose to, I could end it now, but he doesn't. So he would kick Bakugo to the side, and it would all be over, or, over and done with. In which Aizawa would look at them and say, basically look at his class and tell them, does this look like a joke? Like, you guys were all saying, oh, this is so exciting, I get to throw a ball extremely far, all that. Does this look like a joke? It's not. And Izuku is the perfect example of this, that someone is always, or there's a chance that someone is always going to be stronger than you, and you're lucky that that kid is on your side. In which they would all be shocked to hear this, in which Aizawa would tell Izuku to go off to the side. There's no point of him doing this. That little show of his quirk and fighting style, well, that was good enough. He doesn't need to see anymore. Izuku would nod as he would go off to the side and basically just sit down in like a meditative way, and he would just start meditating. He wouldn't worry about what other people are doing, anything like that. And Aizawa would kind of like the kid and would think, oh, you know what? I need this kid to teach me some meditation. Just to find an excuse to sleep, but that's still, right? He'll meditate. No, he won't. But still, Aizawa would go about his normal, whole spiel of, making everybody, like whoever gets last place is gonna be expelled from UA High School and all that stuff, all of that jazz. And this would lead to them doing the quirk assessment and Hagakure, or Invisible Girl, actually getting last place. Now, he would expel her initially, but of course the next day she would be back, and he would basically say like it was a scare tactic. It really wasn't going to be expulsion and stuff like that. He understands that Hagakure's quirk isn't meant for something as brutish as this. It was just supposed to be an example for others to understand the kind of critical ability that this job takes for the most part. In which, of course, that would be easy peasy, just an understanding of that. And honestly, Izuku kind of likes this idea. He's already grown up in a pretty strict environment. His mother was never like, oh, I'm going to allow you to do this or do whatever you want. Like, no, this was like, follow the way or the line, or if you don't, then you're out of here type of thing. He had some really good discipline, so this feels very familiar to him in a way. And Izuku kind of just he's all right with it. He's okay with it. And this would lead them to their next way of training, which would be heroes versus villains, which he actually knew was going to happen from All Might himself. All Might would tell them all to get on their hero outfits or hero suits and get ready to go, and Izuku would don the clothing of his clan, but it was a little bit different as well. Obviously there were some modifications that allowed him to enhance his ice-like powers and also just be able to contain it even a little better. Now, this would allow him to use a little less ice to basically have the same effect, but at the same time allow him to maintain the cold that he needs to maintain. So the suit or the hero outfit is definitely beneficial for him, and it has a little bit of that shinobi or ninja type of twang to it as well. Now, this would lead them to a 2 versus 2 heroes versus villains, and Izuku would be on the hero team with Ochako Uraraka. Now, on the villain team, though, it would be Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida, and let's just say this is not going to be an easy one for the Bakugo, because Bakugo already got his, what beat by Izuku Midoriya, and things are not going to change. Not one bit. Bakugo is already 10 steps behind Izuku, even without One For All, even without Izuku's powers. And the fact is, Bakugo has no martial arts training. I mean, the guy is very basic in terms of fighting styles. Yeah, he's pretty damn smart, so he can learn relatively quick, but Bakugo doesn't have any experience in martial arts for the most part. So when Izuku goes head-to-head with him early on, yes, Bakugo has picked up on some of the little tricks that that Izuku may do, but picking up on a couple of the tricks is far from enough. You need to pick up on all of them. Because Izuku, while fighting Bakugo, would let Ochako basically find where the bomb currently is, so they can go, of course, capture it and do what they need to do. But this is handled easily, like easily by Izuku, right? This would easily be handled by Izuku, at least Bakugo is, and then he would head up to find Ochako, who is struggling a little bit with Tenya Ida, but is finding her way to the bomb, just slowly but surely, in which immediately Izuku would freeze the floor as he would slide and tumble and slam into a wall, and Izuku would just slide over and grab Ochako as he slides, and they would both touch the bomb at the same time. He would shrug as basically Tenya would be in complete shock about how quick he was able to handle what he handled, in which Izuku says that it just seems that they're not quite on the same level as him just yet, but maybe in the future, maybe. In which he picks up Tenya Ida, helping him up, and tells him that he still has got a lot to learn, but everyone has a lot to learn as well, and don't let that deter you. In which everyone's like, wow, this is kind of crazy. I mean, he's being nice. I mean, is he always like this? In which Izuku is a nice person, at least when you involve training, right? When he knows someone can get better, someone can get stronger, he's going to give that positive reinforcement, at least to a certain extent. But he's going to be very stern, just like how his mother would have been, or is, in terms of martial arts. Like, that is something that is definitely going to be upheld within Izuku. Now, this would lead to, of course, just, them watching the rest of the fights or the rest of the heroes versus villains training, and it would be a pretty simple one. Izuku would be pretty impressed by some of them, but pretty damn impressed by Todoroki. I mean, Todoroki has ice powers as well, and they kind of grow a little bit of a little tiny bit of a bond, maybe just like a mutual respect, because they're both very on the silent side and more serious, but they both have ice powers, and Todoroki, they show acknowledgement to each other. They acknowledge each other for the most part. And after all of this is said and done, and after literally, the whole fighting and all of that is all concrete and done and finished off, they would all head back to class, finish up their classes, and do what they need to do. And then finally, after some time would pass, they would finally have something known as rescue training. Something that Izuku is pretty damn excited for. I mean, rescue training seems basic, but it's very interesting. At the end of the day, every single time you're on that, going to help people, a lot of it is involving rescue. And there's a lot of different scenarios you'll have to handle. I mean, a lot. It could be in a lake. It could be on a mountain. It could be, in a thunderstorm. It could be really anything. And that's something that Izuku is kind of excited to learn from. And this is probably the first thing that Izuku has been extremely excited to work on, especially for himself. So, I mean, this is going to be pretty interesting. And he would obviously talk to his classmates just a little bit as they would take the bus to the USJ. And when they would arrive at the USJ, well, it seemed pretty normal. Initially, it was just very basic. Initially, it was just something simple. It was just, hey, let's learn about certain things and do this or do that. And Pro Hero 13 would even explain some of the things that they could actually work on, some of the aspects of the USJ and all of that stuff. And while they're all talking about this, some portals would open up out of nowhere, and just boom, you have these villains out of nowhere just pouring in portals, portaling students to different directions. And Izuku would look, and he would go to help somebody, not be, sucked into a portal, but it would actually suck him into a portal as well, as he would fall straight into some water. Izuku would look around, and he would see some things swimming at him, But just as one of them swims at him, one of these villains, he would grab it and immediately freeze it. Izuku would then make a kind of a patch of ice and would hover over the water, and he would begin moving that patch of ice throughout the water. He would look around to see if there's any other villains, thinking that there has to be multiples, right? They wouldn't just send a single person squadron, in which he would hear a voice, actually a female's voice, that being of Asui from a nearby kind of boat or nearby small yacht. And she would say the direction of where one of them are. He would immediately go toward that direction, spotting him, diving in after him, and freezing him immediately as well, in which he would come up again using his ice, and he would make these platforms that allow him to traverse the area, in which immediately, as the other guy is terrified, like actually freaking out, he would tell Asui to stay up there and to be careful, in which Mineta would tell him that he's also up here as well, in which he would brush him off, saying that he doesn't care what he does. I mean, he's just like, a weirdo. So Izuku would then freeze the entirety of the lake, utilizing partially or parts of One for All, being able to freeze over the entire lake and making it so the person can't really come out of the water, in which Izuku says that he'll let them out and they can go to prison, if they survive at least long enough, and they'll allow them to go away, once the police are here and everybody is here and other heroes are here to bring them in for questioning, you could even say. In which Asui, Mineta, and also Izuku would head off to, see what's going on and what's happening. And when he would arrive, he would see that Aizawa is actually fighting off a large group of villains, and Izuku would tell them to head up over there, and he's gonna go help Aizawa. Do not stop. He tells him, do not come to help. Go over there now, because he doesn't want to have to worry about other people or protecting other people. So he dives in, defeating a bunch of the villains almost instantly and capturing the rest, utilizing his ice, kind of just getting them all stuck to the ground. In which Izuku would tell them that it really was not a good idea to try and come and actually fight us here. Like, this was a horrible, horrible lapse of judgment. I mean, seriously, was the choice they actually got, in which, of course, Shigaraki would actually chime in and say, I mean, they're not here for them or the kids, they're here for All Might. But what's better to get All Might coming over here quicker than killing one of his students? Shigaraki would have a portal appear in front of him as he would reach out toward Izuku, and Izuku would dodge the hand of Shigaraki extremely swiftly, like he's slipping a punch, and grab the wrist of Shigaraki, spreading ice to the arm of Shigaraki itself, in which the ice continues to spread to the rest of his body. Izuku tells him that he either cuts his arm off or, guess what? That ice won't stop, and there is no heat that is going to stop it from actually reaching his entire body. Shigaraki immediately would cut off his own arm, and Izuku would look at him and be like, wow, I can't believe you believed me when I said that. I mean, seriously. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't lying, but the fact that you were so quick to believe me, and at the end of the day, it seems like you knew that disintegrating it would be kind of the same thing, huh? In which immediately Shigaraki is completely shocked by this. How does he even know his quirk? How does he know any of this? In which Izuku would say there's only one reason why they would just, pop a portal in front and he would go to only touch Izuku. It must mean that his touch is definitely lethal, and it seems like he just got rid of one of his ways of actually using it. In which Shigaraki is absolutely shook to the bone. This kid, he's a psychopath. He has to be. How does he even know these things? This is ridiculous, until Shigaraki realizes he remembers something. Something that was told to him by All for One. Something that made him realize who this kid was or what he came from. This is the power and the strength and the type of ideal that he's heard about. But they all died. They were all gone. Shigaraki would spurt out in a fit of rage that he shouldn't even exist, in which Izuku would hear this a little bit and look toward Aizawa, and he would tell him, well, that's good to know. in which he would immediately dash towards Shigaraki, trying to finish the job, really. But immediately a Nomu would hit him right in the face, sending him flying. Izuku would catch himself with some ice and would realize that this Nomu, yeah, it's no joke. But he would immediately utilize 20%, if not a little bit higher, going to 30% of One For All, straining his body just a little bit, and he would begin skating around the Nomu, actually producing a ton of ice to try and freeze the Nomu. He tries his best to actually freeze the Nomu over and shatter him, but he doesn't fully have the strength to do it. It seems like the Nomu has some insane amount of durability, but as he continues to freeze the Nomu and tries to batter off some pieces of the Nomu, actually chipping away at that regeneration and chipping slowly but surely at the regeneration's power, he would hear something from behind him. A footstep, and then another one, and a louder one, and then one quote, "I am here." He would hear this and he would know what time it is. He would immediately encapsulate the Nomu with ice, continuously doing it over and over and over again, because the Nomu is trying to shred his way out and he refuses to let the Nomu go, in which he wouldn't let the Nomu escape from the ice, as one Detroit smash, one to be heard all around Japan itself, would land on the Nomu, shattering the arms, part of the torso, and even basically one of the legs of the Nomu, leaving the Nomu completely defenseless, as one more Detroit smash would end the fight immediately. Shigaraki would be in complete shock, one arm missing. Kurogiri would tell them they need to retreat now. This is not something they were expecting, and not something that was told to them, in which a portal would surround Shigaraki and also, well, Kurogiri, which he is kind of a portal, but yeah, and any other villains they need to swoop up, and they would leave in a hurry, leaving the Nomu behind, in which Izuku would look toward Aizawa and would tell him, "You're welcome," in which Aizawa would nod his head and say that the kid was pretty damn impressive, but even he knew that going through a long, drawn-out fight with the Nomu, or whatever that creature was probably not the best idea. Izuku nods and says that he might have been able to defeat it, but one-punching it was definitely not going to be his specialty, and, well, we have somebody here for that, so might as well make the one punch a little bit easier. In which, of course, Aizawa would be impressed once again by what Izuku was able to do, but of course, he tells him to not do some stupid stuff like that again, where he's risking his life for really no reason, in which Izuku would nod and say he'll be more careful next time, in which Aizawa would tap him on the shoulder, saying that he was pretty damn impressive and to keep up the good work, that he'll be even better than him, sooner than you could possibly imagine. Izuku would nod as they all kind of gathered, all the students and the villains and the heroes come in to take everybody away, and they would head out, and everybody, luckily, is safe. But even Izuku knows and can tell that there was obviously a traitor. He's not sure if it's in his class. He's not sure if it's a teacher. He doesn't even know if it's Aizawa himself, but he knows that there's a traitor. He heard someone say it. He heard Kurogiri reference it. They didn't know that Izuku existed, or at least he wasn't told that Izuku existed. So somebody in here is a traitor. Somebody in UA High School is a traitor and tried to set All Might up. But it's for a topic for a different part, and this is the end of part 2 of What If Deku Was Sub-Zero. Izuku Midoriya had just gone through the USJ incident and is now, well, understanding of what's truly to come. He knows now that there are people still out there, hunting down people like him, hunting down the clan that he was once a part of, even if he was only just a little baby. The clan that his mother was a part of, and frankly, he is more or less the reason why it got hunted down. At the end of the day, Izuku's powers is what attracted this so-called unknown person to them, or the potential powers that Izuku could have, right? That was what attracted them. But now it seems as if they are alerted on the radar in terms of who Izuku is and also what powers he has obtained. So he may become a target in the near future, but those people, they need to be ready, because guess what? Izuku doesn't just have the powers of ice, he has the powers of the number one hero, and they have no idea. But for now, this isn't something that Izuku needs to worry about, or something that he's going to worry about, at least for a little bit, because he has a little bit more school stuff to attend to. And the first thing that's going to be happening after a small break would be the UA Sports Festival. A chance so that all the people there can show off their capabilities, show off what they're made of, and all the above. And All Might makes it pretty clear to Izuku that this is his chance to really show off, to show what he can do, show all of what he's made of. But Izuku even brings up the idea that, is this really the best idea? And obviously All Might would question why he would be questioning it, and he would basically tell All Might what happened. I mean, Shigaraki said that they were looking for someone like him. Shouldn't he preserve what he can do? I mean, I know he did show off some stuff in front of Shigaraki, but what if he just lets it all out? He just shows everybody every single thing he possibly can do, and then boom, the villains have such a leg up on him. Like, that's not good. Like, the villains would just know so much, but immediately All Might shuts this down, saying that yes, he does agree that the villains would have a lot on him, but as a hero, you're always going to play from a disadvantage. And if he thinks that in maybe 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe 2 years, that he's going to have these same techniques, the same skills, and that's it, well then there's a little bit more issues that we gotta deal with, at least here in terms of training. In which Izuku hears this and he thinks to himself, you know what, that's kind of true. At the end of the day, that is the truth. That he's going to be evolved by the time that he has to take on these new people. He's going to be a different type of person, be a different type of being. So I guess that is something to really take into account. And that really certifies for Izuku that he's going to take on this UA Sports Festival head on, especially because he is the #1 student, and you don't want to be missing the #1 student when you start the UA Sports Festival. This would lead to Izuku just doing his little speech, telling everybody that he knows exactly what he's going to do, that he's going to win, that everyone's going to put on a show, and this and that, and just some good stuff that you know everybody would want to hear, of course. And he would tell everybody that in the end of it all, though, he is going to be, the victor, or victor, yeah, something like that. He's gonna be victorious in it all, right? He's going to be the #1 student and show why he's truly the #1 student, and he's going to literally win every single category, in which it would start with an obstacle course race, in which he would show exactly why he's been saying that he's going to be the #1 student for a long time, because he begins to absolutely take off in this race, utilizing about 30% of One For All, or at least enough so that he doesn't really hurt himself too badly. He would take off, jump off the walls, and just sprint by literally everybody. In terms of just flat out speed, he's so much faster than everybody there. Yes, that even includes someone like Tenya Ida, more because Izuku has a lot more of agility, or like this side-to-side mobility, being able to dodge through the corridor and then eventually just freeze the legs of these giant 0-point robots, collapsing them in front of other people. The only person that would somewhat be able to keep up is people like Todoroki, and also, well, you know, Bakugo, or Katsuki Bakugo. And they would be able to keep up through their own means, but Izuku would be taking off, jumping past the canyon of some sorts and getting to the mine area. And yes, don't get me wrong, the mine area is a difficult one, but he is kind of extremely far ahead, so there's really no point of him to just try to walk across the mines safely. So he just freezes them over and just runs right by, sliding straight through where the mines normally are, and he would just be good. He would be on the other side, and he would be the #1 or victor of this category, or you know, he would be victorious in the obstacle course race. in which this would set him up to be the obtainer of the 10 million point band. So he would have to wear a 10 million point band in the next category. But when the others would come through, he would congratulate them to a certain extent. Bakugo would tell him to shut his mouth, but Todoroki would kind of just nod in acknowledgement at the fact that Izuku is pretty damn impressive. But his opinion on Izuku would definitely change later on, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, this would lead to the cavalry battle. And there's a little bit of pushback on the idea of if they should really team up with Izuku or not, or whoever should team up with Izuku or not. Because, yes, don't get me wrong, Izuku is extremely strong, extremely powerful, and everybody can realize that to a large extent, right? Everybody knows how powerful Izuku is, but at the same time, do you really want to pair up with somebody that, well, you know, kind of has a 10 million point band that will probably be targeted extremely heavily? Well, some people do hesitate massively, but the people who don't hesitate, the people who flat out just are like, you know what, whatever, like I want to join Izuku, so I'm just gonna go. People like Ochaku Uraraka, people like Tokiyami, and also Mei Hatsume, and people like that, they would basically instantly just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go with Izuku. Like I'm gonna team up with him because this is probably the best course of action for me to take. Just overall, in which that would be perfect for them, at least, you know, because they're going to win. Like, this is not going to be that close of a fight. Yes, Izuku may have some contest with people like Bakugo, people like Todoroki, because just their powers itself or their quirks. But in terms of just flat out strength, speed, and all of the above, like, Izuku's going to be faster and better than them, and his ice powers allow all of them to kind of keep away everybody for the most part. Like, at the end of the day, Izuku is going to massively benefit from his powers, and also Tokiyami's. At the end of the day, Tokiyami has Dark Shadow, and Dark Shadow is really, really good, especially for something like this, and they'd be able to defend themselves relatively easily, or at least defend themselves for the most part relatively easily. Now, of course, they would have their little, you know, downsides here, downsides there in terms of their planning, but there is no world where they don't at least come out victorious, if not just able to maintain the band that he holds, or, you know, maintain what he has. And that's exactly what happens. Izuku is able to maintain the 10 million point band, and they go on to the very next thing, or the very next round, you could say. Now, this round would be the one that would highly benefit Izuku in all reality, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of people are afraid of Izuku, like flat out afraid. Like, he's pretty damn scary, and there is no denying that to a large degree. Now, in terms of the fact that he's scary, you know, he might not get the heads up on the idea of, well, what's happening, or what Shinso is capable of doing. And since he's a little bit under the idea of what Shinso can do, and doesn't really know fully the capabilities, he would get caught by Shinso's mind control quirk. But as he gets caught by this, well, let's just say it would kind of lead to him more or less looking at all of the spirit vestiges of One for All. And this would be the first time he actually sees them, but there's actually an extra person that he doesn't even know. And, well, the other vestiges obviously seem to be kind of off-putted by it, because they don't know who they are, or he is either. But this person is wearing basically a similar outfit to Izuku, being that of one of the original Sub-Zeros. Now, he doesn't know jack squat about him and why he's even there. Maybe he's just there like as like a picture or an image of who Izuku can or truly is, or whatever you could possibly think of. He doesn't even really know. But the vestiges even themselves have no interaction with this Sub-Zero. I mean, they can see him, they can touch him, but the guy is like really kind of stoic and not moving, and it's just as if he's there. Now, seeing all of the people there, and seeing the vestiges, and seeing all of these things, right? of course, this would, lead to, it would lead to Izuku flat out deciding that, it's time to wake up. And the vestiges would help him do just that. And he would awaken immediately, or almost immediately, and he would turn toward, the one person that basically made him go, under for a while. And he would go at him immediately and as quickly as you could possibly imagine, dashing toward him and kicking him directly off this area or directly off the stage. And he would win just like that. And of course, that whole struggle and that whole thing that happened, that was pretty damn hard to deal with. But overall, now Izuku has smooth sailing, and he's not going to allow something like that to ever happen again. Now, Izuku's next fight would be against the one and only Todoroki, but before that fight could even occur, well, this is where things get a little bit interesting, because the one and only Endeavor would show up. Endeavor would even talk to Izuku and actually talk about the idea of, getting his son to utilize his fire side and this and that, and basically say certain things that Izuku, well, he didn't really like. At the end of the day, Izuku's not a great fan or an amazing fan of Endeavor, and he doesn't really like Endeavor at all. I mean, you could tell that he's kind of a shitty person, so why would he like him, by any means? So he obviously is I don't care about your little, I want my son to utilize his quirk thing. He's like, I don't really care, and none of this really matters to me, but he'll do it, but just not for the sake of Endeavor. That is never going to be, it's never going to be for the sake of Endeavor, you could say. And he'll do it, but he's going to do it for the sake of Todoroki, and, well, Todoroki will know about this as well. In which Endeavor would even try to slightly threaten Izuku for a second, but Izuku would tell him that he should really, really, really calm down on who he's threatening. He may have an ice quirk, and in a technical sense, he may be, powerful and have a counter quirk to his own, but remember, there's always a bigger fish. There's always somebody that is bigger, better, and badder. And he may just be one of them. But he won't, he doesn't really say much more to Endeavor after that as he heads out to fight Todoroki. And this fight is a pretty intense one. I mean, Izuku kind of stalls it out a little bit. In terms of closing the distance, Izuku could flat out do that. I mean, he could close the distance and just end this fight relatively quickly. But he begins to think about this whole idea of Endeavor and also utilizing the fire side of his quirk, or Todoroki utilizing the fire side of his quirk. So he decides, you know what, I'm going to try to get him to use it. And he does just that, right? He tries to influence Todoroki, telling him that he should be using his entire strength, his entire power, and would even tell him dude, this is not your father's quirk. This is your quirk. Make it your own. Make your power your own. Take on that responsibility of bringing light to a quirk like the one your father has. And he would even call his father a shitty person. I mean, you could tell that he's a shitty person. And the fact is that Todoroki has a chance now to really show what that quirk really means and what that quirk really is. Way more than what Endeavor will or ever do, right? This is something, or a chance, that Todoroki truly has, and he should take it, and take it now. In which Todoroki would heed the words, or hear the words, and would believe it to be so he immediately activates his fire and ice at the same time, and Todoroki tells him that this is exactly what he wanted. At least this is what Izuku wanted, and don't be mad if he loses because of it. Izuku, would be like, hey man, this is what I wanted, but I wouldn't get too cocky because I don't think you'll be winning anyways. In which this would shock Todoroki, the confidence of Izuku, because when they start fighting, it's obvious that the ice or the ice versus fire matchup is definitely not one that favors Izuku massively, but it seems like Izuku's ice actually holds up to a certain degree. Yes, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's going to block every ounce of damage the fire shoots, but for the most part, I mean, it does block quite a bit, if not almost all of it, which would shock the hell out of Todoroki. Maybe it's because he hasn't really utilized his quirk to its fullest for the most part. I mean, frankly, he has no idea. I mean, it could be a multitude of things, like genuinely could be a multitude of things. It could be the fact that he barely utilizes his quirk. It could be the fact that he, for the most part, you know, just kind of he's never really utilized the fire side of his quirk very much. It could be that it's really not as powerful as his father's. It could be many things, right? So, of course, he knows that. And with that said, though, Izuku tells him that yes, his power is immense and great, but there's something that every single person in UA lacks, and that's true hand-to-hand combat experience. And as Izuku slides in, blocking a giant fire blast, splitting it right down the middle, he would dive through, kicking, and then punching, and then tossing Todoroki straight off of the barrier, or straight out of the ring, and everybody would be shocked. But then everybody would start cheering. Everyone cheers Izuku's name. Everyone cheers his name, Izuku, right? Or Midoriya, over and over and over again. And everyone is flat out excited to see how well and how much he did. I mean, at the end of the day, that was pretty damn impressive. Like, genuinely impressive. And to be honest, Izuku continues to show off. I mean, show off in all the good ways, of course, but he would continue to show off. Izuku would show off what he's capable of. He would show off exactly what he set out to do, frankly. And when it eventually led to him taking on, well, you know, the one and only Bakugo after defeating Tenya Ida. You know, sorry to Tenya Ida, but let's be honest, he doesn't really stand a chance. But once he does take on the Bakugo after defeating Tenya Ida in a pretty swift fashion, I mean, Ice doesn't really play very well when you're trying to, or Ice plays very well, really, excuse me, when you're facing somebody with immense speed. So he definitely is able to take him down. Bakugo fight, though, is absolutely embarrassing. Like, genuinely embarrassing. And it's not really embarrassing for, you know, the one and only Izuku Midoriya. It's more embarrassing for, well, you get what I mean, Bakugo. Bakugo would be massively embarrassed by this fight, because at the end of the day, he would lose extremely bad. Like, extremely bad. But he's always lost extremely bad to Izuku Midoriya. I mean, over and over again, this has been portrayed. Izuku has always been better and seemingly continues to be better than Bakugo himself. I mean, at the end of the day, he will always have the number of Bakugo and always have the capabilities that are flat out over him, at least over him quite a bit. So, yes, Bakugo loses, but this was more of a mental damaging point, especially for Bakugo, because Bakugo is freaking out, saying that, like, you know, like, it shouldn't have ended like this, it shouldn't have happened like this, blah 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 and so on, freaking out and just flat out getting extremely angry, like extremely angry, in which everyone has to end up muzzling him and stuff, which is a crazy sight for a quote-unquote future hero. But of course, Izuku is deemed as the #1 student in UA and the #1 student in the UA Sports Festival, leading to him getting a massive amount of people wanting him to actually join their agency. But of course, Izuku wouldn't really want to join anyone else's agency, especially when All Might tells him that, hey, like, my old teacher actually wants to take you on as a student, in which this would be beneficial for Izuku. I mean, any extra help he can get with utilizing, you know, One for All, it's something that he's never going to deny, because at the end of the day, it's just flat out beneficial, right? It is flat out something that would massively help him, something that would massively help his training and All Might and so on and all that stuff, right? So he's definitely not going to turn this down. There's really no world he turns this down. So he doesn't turn it down. He actually decides to go train with Gran Torino, and this was going to be, and probably is, the best decision he could possibly make, because when he goes to train with Gran Torino, he would learn quite a few different things. I mean, and when I say quite a few, I mean quite a few. At the end of the day, Gran Torino is a wealth of knowledge, so learning from someone like him, there is no shame in it at all. He learns from Gran Torino different ways to utilize One For All, how to actually and properly distribute One For All throughout his body, even better than what he already was doing, right? I mean, he was already pretty damn good at doing it in terms of, distributing One For All throughout his body. But at the end of the day, a little extra advice never hurt anybody. So the fact is, he was able to benefit pretty heavily from that extra little bit of advice that he was able to get from someone like Gran Torino, which was amazing and great thing for him. And so much so that Gran Torino felt and feels as if it's probably a good time for him to progress, you could say, and good time for him to try out a new area, new field, something like that. Basically, a new thing for him personally, and that has more to do with actually actually being out in the field, because being out in the field is something that not many different things can really test for or evaluate for and stuff like that, right? You really need to be out there for things to kind of truly set its course. And that's exactly what Gran Torino believes, and exactly what Gran Torino is going to do for Izuku. He's going to allow him to be out in the field. So it's a perfect time, or a perfect thing for Izuku to get into, because they actually head off to Hosu City, in which Hosu City has a lot of people that are not the best and definitely full of criminals. So it's a good thing that they actually go here first. And it's a good thing that they actually decide to go here, because it seems as if Tenya Ida is also here as well. But he's here for a totally different reason, actually looking to get revenge for his brother. Yeah, he's looking to get revenge for his brother, and he's gonna do something that is going to basically have the chance of ruining his life. And that may be the understatement of the century, but at the same time, that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, he's going to literally ruin his life if he decides to go on with what he's going to do, and that's trying to kill Stain, or the hero killer. And, well, let's just say Stain is way too much for someone like, Tenya Ida, and it's not a good idea for Tenya Ida to take on Stain all on his own. But luckily enough, someone, or some people are there to actually help him out, and eventually Izuku would realize what's happening, and he would come across Stain and Tenya Ida, with Stain having a blade. Yeah, a blade to the neck of Tenya Ida, who's laying there completely defeated and about to be knocked out for good, or about to be knocked out forever. And that's probably not the best thing, because you don't want to see your fellow comrade go down. So he would jump into action, helping Tenya as much as he possibly can, freezing the Stain for a moment. And as he freezes him, actually, he would see a blast of fire come over, blasting Stain into a wall. Izuku would turn as he sees, the one and only Shoto Todoroki, who is not afraid to utilize his fire quirk. Well, not anymore. And this would excite Izuku just a little bit, and he would tell him that they would definitely need to work together to get this guy down for good, at least, without killing him, in which, of course, this would be agreed upon by the one and only Todoroki. Todoroki would basically tell him, yeah, he agrees. let's get this guy down and out for good so that we don't have to worry about this anymore. In which a combination of ice, fire, and even more ice, well, it's a pretty interesting battle, and a battle of this ranged and hand-to-hand combat. Izuku would crank up his one for all, utilizing 40%. Yes, it strains himself, but he does utilize 40% of one for all, and he's able to really keep up, if not outpace, the hero killer by a large margin, or at least a margin that would be pretty drastic in my opinion. And he would be able to outpace him to a large degree. And in terms of outpacing him, and while he's outpacing him, Todoroki is sending his support using ice and fire. And on top of that, well, you know, Todoroki is, or not Todoroki, excuse me, Izuku is fighting with his insane hand-to-hand combat. I mean, at the end of the day, Izuku is extremely good at hand-to-hand combat. I mean, maybe not on the level of the hero killer, just because, you know, he's been learning in kind of subpar environment. I mean, if he was trained in his village with like trained shinobi ninja type characters and type people, then of course, I mean, he would be able to keep up, if not destroy the hero killer. But with the combination of his martial arts, one for all, and also, you know, ice powers, that's how he's able to destroy the hero killer, and that's how he's able to defeat him. But of course, he's not trying to kill the guy, because yes, if he was going in for the kill, which makes things a hell of a lot easier, then it would be easier for him to do it. But of course, he's trying to hold back, not hurt anybody, and not kill anybody. So he would freeze over the hero killer, and they would maintain kind of his capture. And the hero killer would be pretty damn impressed, saying that the kid is showing signs of even All Might himself, but an All Might that would be a little bit more connected via his, you know, other quirks, making kids think that they could actually be someone like him. In which Izuku would tell him to kind of shut his mouth, but also tell him that kids already believe they can be All Might now, so not much will actually change. In which hero killer would kind of shrug a little bit and kind of nod, because I mean, that is the truth. Like, a lot of kids truly do believe that they can be All Might, and there's really no way around it. They believe that they can be All Might even if some, like, you know, crazy stuff happens, or, you know, they're not strong enough, they're not whatever, right? They still believe that they can be All Might. And hey man, maybe they can, maybe they can't, but that's a belief that a lot of them are going to go by, and a belief they'll die on, at least for a while. Now, this would lead them to having the capture of the hero killer, and also Endeavor taking on the responsibility of basically, or not even the responsibility, but the credit for the most part, taking on the credit and just getting the kids off scotch-free for the most part. And yeah, they do get in a little bit of trouble with UA, but everybody is sent back to UA early because, yeah, a villain attack and, you know, all of this stuff happening. Yeah, we're shutting down internships, so that's exactly what happens. They shut down internships, and they all head back to UA. Aizawa would even say that, I mean, it's kind of the best time to do so, because guess what? They actually have, well, a little bit of things going along and a little bit of things happening. And those things include, well, you know, the final exams, in which everybody's like, oh no, like, you gotta be kidding me. Final exams, like, that sounds horrible. In which they will have a written and a practical, which the written is a pretty basic thing. I mean, it's literally like a written test. Yes, a lot of people struggle on it because, you know, you're gonna need a lot of help from the nerds and the study geeks and all that, at least for the most part, or at least a lot of students will. But of course, Izuku is pretty well prepared for that as well. And then you would have the practical exam, and the practical exam is where things change drastically. The practical exam is gonna be nothing like anybody has ever seen, and the practical exam, well, it's not gonna be against robots. Well, it's going to be against teachers themselves. Yeah, you heard it. Teachers themselves will take on the students to determine if they're allowed to go to the forest training camp, But that battle and all of those things will happen in the next part of What If Deku Was Sub-Zero, or part 4 of What If Deku Was Sub-Zero. Izuku Midoriya has now, or is now ready for his final exam. And his final exam would be against the one, the only, All Might. Yes, All Might's gonna go head to head with Izuku Midoriya, and let's just say they've done this quite a bit, but it seems as if All Might doesn't truly know what this guy is capable of, or truly know what Izuku Midoriya is capable of, and that right there is something that All Might's gonna have to think about while they battle, and while they go head to head. Now, Izuku does have a partner in this fight, and it's not one that he's going to be too happy with, but he does have a partner. His partner is Katsuki Bakugo, and let's just say they don't get along very well, and that's probably a massive, and I mean massive, understatement, because he flat out just doesn't get along with or they don't get along with each other at all. Izuku tries his best to, like, you know, tell Bakugo, like, oh yeah, this is where All Might's kind of weak. We could expose this or expose that. Nothing insane or anything like that. It's not like he's going to, or it's not like he is exposing the fact that he is some, you know, or that he's massively injured or something like that. But he is exposing certain fighting weaknesses that All Might actually portrays. So he's making sure to, you know, flat out tell Bakugo these things, but Bakugo is also just not listening, like, at all. Like, Bakugo is not listening at all. He continues to kind of ignore Izuku as he's trying to tell him, like, certain things that they really should do, but of course, you know, Bakugo don't like all that. So when they go into the battle or the fight, it's kind of a very, very basic one in terms of, well, they don't have any strategies, nothing like that, and they really should have, but they didn't. Now, this would lead to Bakugo getting basically knocked out quicker than you could possibly imagine, and, well, it's now time for Izuku Midoriya, or Sub-Zero, to take on his teacher and his mentor. He even tells All Might this is where the student becomes the master, and, well, honestly, he should probably take off those weights if he wants a fair fight. All Might would kind of chuckle at this just a little bit as he takes off the weights, and everybody is in shock and awe as they watch the battle begin between Izuku Midoriya and All Might. They would go head to head, and it's obvious that Izuku is pretty damn powerful. He begins to up his usage of One For All, and with his training with Gran Torino, he's able to utilize a higher dosage of One For All as well, being able to use closer to 50 or even 60% of One For All, putting him on a physical strength of, well, even All Might himself. He would go head to head with All Might as they go blow for blow, but in terms of technique, Izuku is so much better, being able to land crucial and critical blows to the stomach or to the body, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, Izuku seems to be just flat out just a better fighter, and Izuku's showing this off through also, you know, utilizing his ice powers and so on and so forth, and more and more. And everybody is in complete shock that Izuku is doing all of this, that Izuku is able to literally keep up, if not is beating All Might. I mean, everybody is watching this with their jaws on the floor practically, and eventually Izuku would get to the point where he then uses capture cuffs and captures All Might, and All Might is slightly smirking, slightly covered in ice, but as the ice would crumble and go away, the alarms would sound, and they would say Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo, well, sort of, have passed the test, in which Izuku would help All Might get all the ice off of him and stuff like that, in which they shake hands, and All Might says that he knew he chose a proper person to take on the mantle, and honestly, he probably should have learned some martial arts himself in his heyday, at least some really refined martial arts, and he might have been even better in hero work than he was even to this day. Izuku tells him that every single generation after generation, is going to get better and better and better. So he understands that, you know, he didn't decide to take on this martial arts burden how, well, Izuku did in the first place. But he tells him that he's nonetheless impressive and nonetheless the best teacher he could possibly have. Now, with that said, Izuku would obviously pass and go on to be able to, you know, do his normal thing, in terms of, well, going to the forest training camp. And the forest training camp would be a perfect time for Izuku, and a perfect time for everyone else that is also there. At the end of the day, this is going to be their chance to work hard, train hard, get stronger, and all of the above. That's what they want to do, and that's what they're going to do. And that's what Izuku really needs to do as well. And he wants to and needs to get as strong as possible, because he never knows, or he's never going to know, when those villains will strike again. And when they would all go to the forest training camp, and they would all get shoved off that cliff and have to fend through the entire forest, well, let's just say the time is finally about to come. The time where the villains come knocking, because the League of Villains would lay siege on the forest training camp. But luckily enough, Izuku is looking out for a couple of the people that are in bad positions, aka Koda. He's able to be near Koda during this siege, and he goes head to head with the man by the name of Muscular. But Izuku tells him that if this right here, if they are the villains that laid waste to his village, laid waste to his family when he was just a baby, if these are truly the villains, and if he was even a part of it, even a tiny bit a part of it, that he's going to teach him a lesson that he'll never forget. Muscular kind of makes fun of him, thinking, oh, I mean, you're a joke. There's no way that you're going to be able to stand a chance against me. I'm way too strong, I'm way too fast, and whatever. But of course, there is no jokes to be made. Izuku Midoriya begins to beat down Muscular in front of Koda. And don't get me wrong, Koda's not like, he's not scarred by the fact that Izuku's beating the hell out of him. He's more scarred by the fact that Muscular was threatening him, a little child. And Izuku, utilizing his ice and his ice weaponry, begins to neutralize the muscles, and also begins to restrict him, or restrict Muscular, utilizing some of his weaponry. And eventually, Muscular be on the ground, covered in ice, with barely a grasp of air left within him. And Muscular would lay there completely exhausted, completely torn to pieces, and bruised up and bloodied, as Izuku would lay him there and leave him there completely covered in ice. He would pick up Koda and tells him to hold on tight, and it's going to get a little bit chilly as they skate off down the mountain, and as he heads across to get him to safety to the rest of the campers. Izuku would drop off Koda and look for his other classmates to try and help them to his best of his ability, but eventually when he would arrive, he would see that a portal would be opening up, and this portal would be taking Bakugo. But as Bakugo is getting taken away, well, let's just say Shigaraki with his single arm would have Bakugo's neck grasped, Bakugo's neck grasped by his hand with only one finger up, and tells Izuku that if he wants to save the kid, that he better come with them right now. The only way that he'll trade Bakugo right now is for him. Everybody's telling him not to do this, that this is a horrible idea, but Izuku walks over and tells them to calm down, to not do anything too rash, not do anything too crazy, to take a breath as he walks through the portal. But they would drag Bakugo through as well, and basically null and voiding the idea of letting Bakugo go. But this is exactly what Izuku thought they would do. There was no world where Izuku thought that they were going to make a proper treaty, a proper plan. So he knew that they would drag Bakugo here still. and they would capture them both and secure them both via handcuffs, unable to move and unable to actually utilize quote-unquote their quirks. But here's the issue, and here's the massive issue that is happening. They have quirk canceling cuffs, some that they actually stole recently, but here's the thing. Here is the thing. It seems as if, well, Izuku, well, it seems as well they have underestimated what Izuku can truly do, because Izuku, well, let's just say he doesn't have a quirk necessarily. Yes, he has one for all, but he doesn't have a traditional quirk, and well, his ice powers, they are not what they think it is. Some of the villains believe that it's some sort of quirk that was embedded within them, but it's not. It's not the case at all. And well, the reality of it is he doesn't have a quirk. And I'm gonna be honest, this is where things get a little bit tricky and a little bit intense, because Izuku is sitting there and he's ready and waiting for his opening. And as he awaits and waits for his opening, he kind of sends like a signal to Bakugo, in which Bakugo is definitely paying attention, because he is a hardhead. Don't get me wrong, he's annoying and he's stupid sometimes, but at the same time, Bakugo knows that this is a very serious situation, so he basically awaits the signal from Izuku. But this signal wasn't even needed, because they just let Bakugo go. Since they want Bakugo to actually join them, they uncuff him, allowing him to now utilize his quirk. And then eventually Izuku sees this and thinks, oh well, this feels like an opening. And as Bakugo kind of tells them to F off and slams an explosion in Shigaraki's face, he immediately would freeze off the handcuffs and just jump into action with Bakugo. Explosions, ice, and kicks going everywhere as they begin to absolutely beat the snot out of most of the villains there. And Shigaraki can't even react, as he's frozen to the ground and his arm frozen to a wall, stuck to the point where he can't actually utilize his quirk. And everybody else there, all the villains that are also there, like Dabi and people like that, are basically put in a position that they can't do anything. They're put in a position that they can't actually do a single thing. But eventually the room would go chill, the room would go stoic, and the room would feel like death, because a person would be rising out of a portal, and a person would be rising out of his own doing, and he would stand there with not even a facial expression to be seen. Well, literally not to be seen. Bakugo and Izuku turn around to see All For One, and All For One would tell them both that they have an opportunity here, an opportunity to join him, to join them, and to join what truly will be the future of this whole entirety of Japan. And if they decide to refuse, well, let's just say he won't be taking it very lightly. As this is said, though, All Might and many other heroes would break through the wall, as All For One would tell Izuku and Bakugo that their time seems to be running out. All For One would approach All Might, and a fight would begin, as they would transfer off into a different location, and Izuku, Bakugo, and many of the other League of Villains, who are, encapsulated in ice at this moment, but all of them would appear as well. They would be given an opportunity and given an option to join All For One, or you can die alongside All Might himself and watch as Japan begins to burn. But All For One has underestimated what this truly is. He was seeking out the person that would have the ice powers, or an ice quirk that originated from this clan. Thought it didn't exist, but then thought he exterminated all of them. Not because he thought they were a threat, but because he thought that it would have been useless to have some of them around if they didn't actually don the powers. But Izuku has those said powers. He has them. Basically, the perfect person for him to truly transfer his conscious and also his powers into. But All For One, well, let's just say he didn't expect this person to even exist anymore. He didn't expect this person to even, well, have any say or have any being in this place that they currently are. But he is here and he is now, and Sub-Zero is ready to end the reign of tyranny of All For One, and that's exactly what Izuku attempts to do. Bakugo would tell him that they should avoid this conflict, at least the one involving All For One, because All For One is going to be a hell of a thing, and All For One is going to be a pretty scary opponent, excuse me. And, well, Bakugo would kind of give off this weird look as he's saying this, and he says he hates to admit it, but this is All Might territory, and Izuku says he agrees, and that's why it's his territory as well. He would blast over using his ice toward All For One and All Might, and he would tell All Might that he's not going to let the old man go down, at least not to this ugly thing that stands in front of them. And he tells him that they've been training together for a while now, and they're all synced up. So he hopes that he's ready to actually fight and give it all he has, and to not hold back, and not to worry about himself, not to worry about Izuku, that he has it completely handled, like he has everything good to go, and not to worry about a single thing. So he absolutely just goes at it. I mean, they go at it with All For One, and Izuku utilizing his ice and his powers. I mean, it's putting All For One on the back foot, and the strength of All Might, it's still pretty comparable. It's no joke, and the strength of All Might is allowing Izuku and allowing Bakugo or Izuku and All Might, excuse me, to keep up with All For One for the mass majority of the fight. So much so that All For One tries his best to do a latch-ditch effort to mortally wound one of them, but it doesn't even work. Izuku would tell All For One that he is going to be stopped here and now, and his entire League of Villains crew will also follow suit. Izuku's basic body, or his body for the most part, begins to be encapsulated in ice, and Izuku tells him that he's been working on something for a while now, and this right here will bring everything to the forefront. Ice surrounding his body like a complete and utter ice, like ice armor, and he would dash toward All For One, taking blows from the black tendrils, but he's able to keep up and eventually get hands on All For One, surrounding him in ice slightly enough to land a punch of his own, and then a double Detroit smash into a double United States of smash would lead to All For One crumbling at All Might's and Izuku Midoriya's feet. Izuku would then immediately summon a blade of ice and put it to the neck of All For One, in which All Might would look at him slightly and tell him that a choice will always be made, and a choice he made a long time ago, well, let's just say, makes it so that he definitely deserves it. Trust me. Trust me, that he says that he understands. He knows that he deserves it, and he can tell that Izuku is hurting, and can tell that this feels like the right idea. But he tells Izuku that he lost a mother figure, a mentor, and all of the above because of All For One. And he tells Izuku that as much as he would love to do this, as much as he would love to end the life of All For One as well, it's not what you should do, and it's not what you're supposed to do. In which Izuku would hear him and say that it would be so easy just to end him, so easy to put him down for good. But easy, well, easy isn't always the right answer. He tells All Might that he's gonna head off now, and he needs to head home. and he tells him that well, he'll see him the next time they train, and he'll see him at school very soon. In which All Might tells the kid that he's proud of him, that he's trained the kid, he's helped the kid, and he knew that him being the successor to, well, himself would be the best and the most logical choice. And he makes that very known every single day. Izuku nods as he basically shows All Might, like, yeah, I thank you, and I know. And as he leaves, All Might would just allow the kid to leave and to head off, and Izuku would just await his next session with his class, and it would be a pretty basic one too, just normal school for a little bit, but then they would actually start the act of training, and the act of like actually full-on training, doing super moves and stuff like that. But Izuku already has so many different super moves and so many different things that allow him to be capable on so many different levels. But one thing he didn't know, and one thing he was surprised by, would be someone approaching him during one of these training sessions. Now, it wouldn't be just All Might. It would be All Might and one other person, someone he actually doesn't know much about. But Aizawa would tell him to really pay attention to what's happening, and to really pay attention to what happens when you do good things. Izuku hears this, and he kind of shrugs his shoulders a little bit, but he would then walk with them as well. It seems as if someone is there to give him something that Izuku was not expecting, and that was a provisional hero license. And everybody, Izuku and also even All Might, would be pretty shocked by this. I mean, this is insane. This doesn't happen ever. Why would they do this? But they would say that Izuku was captured. He kept a level head, and when he had a chance to end a villain that, well, not many other people would neglect the chance to take out, well, he decided to show him mercy. Decided to show him that, well, that being a hero is it has so many layers and is so much better than being somebody that takes revenge. In which Izuku says that he appreciates it, and he truly believes that there's a chance, or there is a part of him that definitely feels that he deserves it, but he's still honored to know that someone else is going to give him the opportunity to give him the chance of being a true or a licensed quote-unquote hero, in which they do say it's only a provisional hero license, so he's not like a full-on hero just yet, but it is something that would give him the next kind of step to his journey. And Izuku is happy to hear this, in which All Might even says that with that said, and with all of that cemented, that he might as well tell him now what's going on, and actually tell him now some news he got. He got some news from somebody known as Sir Night-Eye, and he should be getting some more, you could say, information or some more heads up very, very soon. And before you know it, Izuku would be actually getting greeted by someone by the name of Mirio while his class is out doing their own provisional hero license exam. And Mirio would tell him that Sir Night-Eye wants to give him an offer, and Sir Night-Eye wants to give him an offer to join their agency and take his hero work to the very next level, because he knows that he is the successor of All Might, but on top of that, probably a better choice than anyone could possibly have been. Now, Mirio doesn't tell him that specifically in terms of the whole successor thing, because let's be honest, Mirio wouldn't know, but Sir Night-Eye would definitely bring this up when they would meet for the very first time, telling him that he did question All Might. He did question him fully on who he should really pass the baton to, but it seems like he passed the baton to the right person, especially after the display that was shown and given, well, not too long ago. He tells the kid that they got a mission and they have something very, very serious going on, and they're going to need his help. So that's exactly what Izuku's going to do. Take on the mission of stopping Overhaul, the leader of the Shia Hazaikai, but that is for part 5 of what if Deku was Sub-Zero. Izuku Midoriya has now joined Sir Night-Eye's agency, and let's just say it's going to be a pretty damn good partnership for both sides. Now, I would say that, Izuku's going to benefit more from Sir Night-Eye, but honestly, Izuku is going to benefit pretty heavily, but Sir Night-Eye is going to benefit just as much at the end of the day. Because, well, the person they're looking for is Overhaul, or the leader of the Shiha Azaikai, and let's just say they're not going to, it's not an easy person to find, but for some reason, Izuku has the best of luck being in the best of places at the best of times. Because when Izuku and Mirio team up, well, they would come across somebody on their patrol, and that somebody would be a little girl by the name of Eri. Eri would stumble across and would just run into Izuku, and Izuku would ask if she's okay, if everything's fine, but then quickly they would realize that this was Overhaul, that is who was here. And Izuku would try to play it off cool, and, well, Mirio would be glad to see this because, I mean, obviously that's what he would want Izuku to do. And Izuku would tell him, look, he understands, he gets it, that there's, that children can be a handful, it can be difficult, and honestly, he deals with a lot of classmates and a lot of other people that are practically children. And he yaps on and on and on about this, and he even says, like, oh yeah, Mirio, he's very unprofessional, like Mirio's this and that. And as he's saying all these things, you can tell Overhaul is like confused, like, why are you saying all these things? Like, just let me leave, like, why are you doing this? In which Izuku goes, okay, like, sorry for holding you so long. And then he goes over to Eri and picks her up slightly, and basically goes, okay, it's time to go back to your papa now. As Eri hugs Izuku, Izuku would slightly smile as he would look at Overhaul and tell him, well, it seems like he hasn't noticed just yet. In which immediately Overhaul would look around as he sees ice encroaching on his body and ice covering his hands and also his arms. Immediately the ice as well would kind of cover his legs as well, and he would try to break free of it, but it seems like he can't get an open palm on the ice, so he's unable to actually activate his quirk fully. And during this time, Izuku is kind of like, smiling at this, and tells Overhaul that he's already dealt with someone very similar to him. He's already imprisoned somebody very similar to him. Hand powers are definitely interesting, especially when you already have, well, gloves on top of them. And it seems as if he wasn't prepared for something like this. And Izuku makes it very clear that he's done his research and he's done his preparation, so there was no way he was getting out of this, especially after obvious showing of abuse of a child. I mean, come on, like he was gonna let him leave. And if he was, well, living in a different time, Izuku tells him that he would have chopped the guy's head off already at least a couple seconds ago. Now, with that said, the police are arriving, and heroes as well are arriving to actually capture Overhaul fully, and Izuku has him completely captured and encapsulated. And once they're able to get quirk canceling cuffs on him, it is basically over. And Izuku tells him that he just ran into the wrong person. And frankly, any other person that was here, any other maybe person that or hero that was trying to capture him, it wouldn't have worked as well. But unfortunately, he grabbed and pulled the short end of the straw, you could say, or the short end of the stick. And yeah, he had to deal with him, in which they capture Overhaul, and eventually they would lay siege to Overhaul's hideout as well, gaining also more information about these quirk canceling bullets, and how that Eri was actually the one that was more or less producing them. And not producing them on her own, of course she is a little child, but it was more producing it through her own blood, which is a scary thing because they were like pricking her and hurting her body and stuff like that. But luckily now she's in a safe place, and now she can enjoy her life just kind of like a semi-normal child, even though, let's be honest, living in the world of, well, the one they are in is nothing but normal. Now, with that said, they would take in Eri, and she would kind of find a home with Aizawa and also Yue in general. And of course, they would go through the motions of different things that are going on in UA. Nothing too crazy, of course, but Class 1A and Class 1B would actually get some joint training where Izuku would go head-to-head with the likes of Shinso once again. But yeah, the fight isn't too insane. Izuku's just use of One For All at such a high level, his utilization of his ice, and basically not being able to be mimicked at all by Monoma would be yeah, it would be pretty difficult for anybody to really keep up by all means. And with the fact that they do have you know, the one and only Mineta to for the most part kind of lock down anybody that needs to be locked down in terms of you know, just being captured and stuff like that, would be very, very simple. So it would lead to them obviously winning their own fights. But of course, there would be other fights that Izuku is not involved in that they would watch unfold before anything else. But this would lead them to going throughout the motions of kind of working with different agencies and stuff like that. And some other heroes would actually set up a bit of a invasion on the Liberation Front Army that most students aren't going to be very involved in at all, which they have more of the major heroes handle some of the other major heroes. Now, if Izuku is involved in this, it would be involved through the likes of Sir Night-Eye and stuff like that, but they definitely don't necessarily need Izuku or anybody else when they have a large group of highly skilled heroes that can go handle it on their own. And Izuku would just go throughout his normal journey of being a hero. But the one thing that Izuku really never wanted, for the most part, was to be at the top of the heap. I mean, he doesn't necessarily care about being this world-renowned hero. Don't get me wrong, he is kind of the successor to the #1 hero, and as the years would pass on, the mold of this idea of him being the successor of the #1 hero would pile on and on and on. Izuku Midoriya, the successor of the one and only All Might. Izuku Midoriya, the one and only. But here's the thing. Izuku came from a clan that was broken down, battered, and destroyed by All For One. And his mother, well, she wants to reconnect with that said clan. And even though that they can't necessarily do that with, you know, the extermination of it, but they can still, at the end of the day, help build the clan's teachings as much as possible. And that's exactly what they do. They build the clan's teachings. As Izuku enters the world of being a true hero after graduating from UA High School, he would go on to teach as much as possible. He would teach not at UA, but he would teach the ways of his clan that he would learn from his mother. His mother basically taking the forefront of the martial arts and also weaponry teaching, where they would learn, they would seek out more or less better strength, technique, and just a way of life that would lead them down probably the line of hero work. Yes, Izuku's mother, or Inko Midori, is already doing that, helping in a minor way, but now that she is kind of relieved of the idea that somebody is currently and still hunting them, she no longer has to worry about anything, no longer has to be concerned about anything that is currently happening, or be concerned that, you know, they're gonna be hunted down or hurt or destroyed or killed in any way. So they don't have to worry about that at all. So she can freely teach the ideas that have been taught to her, and freely teach the ideas that she taught to Izuku Midoriya. And Izuku can teach and also work in terms as a hero, but mostly teach the ways of his clan and also the ways of being a actual hero. Izuku Midoriya, he may have stepped into this world to support his family, support his mother, and defend those who truly needed it, the way that he needed to be defended when he was just a little baby. But he would soon kind of encapsulate something he never understood that he would ever do in his life. He would be the symbol of peace, this symbol of hero that people should work towards, people should step up towards. And Izuku, at a really young age, being around his 20s, would already be at the top of the heap. But on top of that, he would be helping the younger generations, helping those get stronger, being capable, and that would include someone like Eri. Aizawa still being that legal guardian to Eri, he would decide to allow them to teach her martial arts, teach her kind of the way of the fist type of thing and the way of protecting herself. And this would lead to her building herself up and preparing herself to being ready to join that next generation of heroes. And Izuku would not only be preparing the next generation of heroes, but on top of that would be preparing himself for anything that could possibly come. You never know what's going to happen. You never know who could show up. And at the end of the day, when strong powers show up in this world, it seems as if an equal and opposite will show up as well. So Izuku wants to always and forever always be prepared for an eventual kind of comeuppance of more and more villains that may try to take the place of someone like Shigaraki, someone like All For One, and someone that would try and hurt those he cares about. Now, with that said, that's for a story for another day and another time, and this will be the end of What If Deku was Sub-Zero. Now, if you enjoyed, please show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. I know this video was a little shorter, but I'm not going to lie, some of the parts in this series were a lot longer than I normally make them. Because normally it's like I do a 30-minute video and then it's more like a 28-minute video, and then like it goes lower and lower as we proceed through the series. But I believe in this series I had like 3 videos that were over 30 minutes long and then like a 26-minute video, so they were pretty damn long in terms of the entirety of the series. But I hope you guys still enjoyed the series of What If Deku was Sub-Zero. But like I said, the next series I'll be trying a little bit of a different style, maybe a faster paced style. I know some of you love the storytelling. Some of you say like I take too long to go throughout certain story plots or certain story arcs that, let's be honest, probably don't need to be talked about as much. And I understand that. I'm trying to find a nice little perfect balance and try to find a place where I enjoy doing the what ifs. Now, with that said, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. And make sure to show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.